Three, two, one, action.
Well, let me tell you something, brother!
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Wrestling in Film podcast. Today, we do something, I don't want to even say different anymore. I mean, nothing's different. We have a hodgepodge of episodes. However, today, we continue our recent month of John Cena themed episodes because it's John Cena's final year in WWE, and of course, Peacemaker is in the thick of its second season. We'll get to that at the end of the season. But today what we're going to do is we're going to look back 15 years later. Today marks 15 years of one of John's early films, early kind of ventures into the movie industry. Of course, as we know, not a successful one, but it's an interesting reflection because we're looking at Legendary, a sports drama that John Cena did under WWE Productions. And it was John's first real venture into kind of like dramatic, non-action type roles. And I remember then thinking it had promise. 15 years later, I still see that promise. Of course, it doesn't quite deliver like John's early career. But we'll dive into that and we'll see even some of the flashes of positives, especially in John's performance, and where it all went wrong. But I thought that'd be an interesting subject because it's obviously, deservedly, it's got lost and forgotten because it wasn't that great. But considering what we do here and considering John's kind of evolution, I think it would be a very, very interesting exploration. And to especially looking back now, how far John Cena has come. So check it out. Enjoy this episode as we look back at the not so legendary film, Legendary. Legendary is about a family, or more specifically, a young high school student who is the stereotypical, scrawny, academic, intelligent kid who discovers his family's lineage of success in wrestling. His older brother, who's kind of estranged from the family, who is, of course, John Cena, and his father, who's now passed away, they were highly decorated wrestlers, and he's obviously gone in the other direction. And his mother, who he lives with, is kind of very against the idea of him becoming a wrestler because of what it's caused to their family and the dysfunction they're now left with. And so he decides to venture into wrestling in the hopes that it will bring their family, their brother, their estranged brother, and their mother, and everyone together and kind of reconcile. Long-winded explanation there. I apologize. Good premise. It's nothing that these kind of films have never kind of explored before. Everything is there that you traditionally expect from this kind of a sports drama. The familial dysfunction, the kind of sweet, like romantics, like a side story. All of these things are there. And I remember, like I said, vividly when I watched the trailer back in 2010 as a young teen, and knowing that these movies were never really that great. By this point, WWE had a track record of not so good movies. But being the fan I was always hopeful that one will be good. And at this time, I remember seeing the trailer. It was different, and I thought, okay, this looks like it could be something. Like it could be alright. This doesn't look bad. And it was obviously very different for John. It was dramatic. And although I didn't think John was going to be that great of a dramatic actor, Danny Glover's in it, and there was Patricia Clarkson. I may have got that name incorrect, who plays the mother. So you had strong actors, and I thought, okay, they can they can bring their strengths as actors, carry the dramatic scenes, and John can do enough on his end, and it could work. So, like I said, a lot of promise, and watching 15 years later, I can say in the intro, I still saw these opportunities where this film could have been, I think, like a nice, heartwarming, really solid film. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing incredible, but I think it could have been a really good, solid film. But obviously, there's flaws which I will get to, and one of those flaws is which we discovered, and even I myself discovered many years later, because I've written about this for Filmhounds magazine. If you picked up the 2021 issue back in, I don't know if it was December, it was sometime around then, before the first season of Peacemaker, I wrote this piece about John Cena and why Peacemaker is the perfect role for him. Because John is not your traditional actor who can kind of do all sorts of roles. Comedy, yeah. I mean, like, he can do comedy, he can do action, and there's elements of dramatic, serious acting John is capable of. However, John cannot do well, in my opinion, and I think history has proven us correct thus far, just straight-laced drama, serious acting. Because what John's foundation is, what's made John successful, what John thrives in, is comedy, and more specifically, very hammy, over-the-top kind of a comedy, because John has this instinct, has this physical energy that is very loud and very big. And if John can't tap into that, it's like, it feels like this weird thing where you need to allow John to get that out, and then he can slowly successfully transition into more dramatic elements of that character. And again, Peacemaker being the prime example of that, because then in Peacemaker, through that, him giving you those madcap moments of silliness, the hammy nature, and then that vulnerability and dramatic side can then come out really, really well. Because if you see in WWE, he can be vulnerable, he can be sincere, but he still needs to have that other hammy element. And like I said, it's this really interesting package. And he doesn't even play the straight-laced tough guy very well. If you look at Heads of State more recently, he wasn't this traditional tough guy. Idris Elba was the tough guy. He was the more quirky, silly one. So John's image, I think some people still to this day will look at him as like the action guy. He's not. He's not the action guy. He's the comedy guy, and who has these other layers he can go into when done correctly. And like I said, Peacemaker is a perfect example of that. Vacation Friends is a brilliant example of that. Trainwreck, obviously. That's where John shines the best. So knowing that now, this film was kind of destined to go wrong for John in some sense, because it was a straight-laced, dramatic role that John didn't have the ability to do. And it doesn't actually force John to tap into too much depth here, which is a good thing, which could have been explored further. But like I said, knowing now, it was always not going to be quite the role for John. But having said that, in hindsight, looking back now, and what I found very, very interesting is I knew all of that, what I just said. And I know that wasn't the perfect film, and I know all these things, and I could see, and I can identify why the film went wrong now. But what I found more interesting was I could see the foundations of the good actor that John has eventually become. Because there's some natural instincts, some subtlety, not kind of going too far in moments, some simplicity, which you can see now, and like I said, in Peacemaker and other films that he's done. And I'm like, all right, and like I said, knowing it now, you can it was there. Like, there was always a semblance of that in John. Like, I think especially with some of the scenes with the younger brother, and like him kind of there's where he gets another wrestler one time to train with his brother, and they're on the side talking, just watching his brother, and just has this little conversation, and it's nice. It's simple. it works, and you're like, he can do this. Like, he can actually act. Like, not the greatest in that capacity, but he can do it, and he's successful, and it works. Of course, like John always does, it then does become hammy in moments, even like the simple things. And still to this day, John does this. Like, when John had his heel run now in WWE, he would put on that mean face, and sometimes it was too much, and like it felt a bit forced. So sometimes even like what appears simple, John he can't contain himself. It has to be bigger and too much. And that happens in these moments. And funnily enough, it happens when it's like comical, or like there's comical moments, or he has to just almost be a bit more still, and it feels like John can't do that as simply or as effectively as one would like. But yeah, but that, like I said, that was really interesting. Like you could still see, you can see 15 years later, you can see the flaws, but more importantly for me, I was like, you can actually see John's got something, and 15 years later, thankfully, he's shown it, and he's found his path. Which, so in that sense, like I said, it's a really interesting reflection. As I said, plenty of negatives. Like I said, in my Letterboxd review, I actually said it feels like a series of missed opportunities, the film does. Because while other films like The Marine, or God knows what other not so wonderful things John did early in his career, were just doomed almost from the get-go. There was nothing ever really there that was going to make it a great film. It was just a very poor script, idea, whatever it may be. Legendary had a lot of things that had promise. It had a concept that was interesting. It had a concept it had a nice heart. It had good actors. Danny Glover still has nice little moments, and that being the old kind of wise head in the story, it worked, and he was good. There were still moments that make it kind of nice, kind of fun. There's the heart still shows, and like the moments with the girlfriend and like the young brother are nice. And even like I said, John has some scenes which aren't bad, but the world building is terrible. It derails all the promise kind of from the get-go, because you're not really invested. It doesn't set up these characters, this situation effectively, and give you the reason to want to root for him and be in it, and also understand like why he has to become a wrestler. It doesn't feel like he has to become a wrestler. He could have just seeked out his brother and found another route. Like that just felt like a forced thing, and that's where the film goes wrong, is as opposed to effectively tying these threads or within the story together, it kind of just shoehorns it in there. And it's, like I said, really disappointing, because had they been done effectively, the actors, like for example, like Glover, his words, his performance would have been enhanced greatly. And that would have also enhanced John's work, because we would have been more invested, and the script would have been stronger, and John could have just had, like, what he already did could have been elevated. And the actors alongside him, who did really good in moments, their scenes with him would have been better, and just everything would have been enhanced. And I think in this instance, the script and the direction of the film was where everyone got let down. I don't think John's actually bad in the film at all. And obviously the other actors do a good job. It's the direction and the writing that lets them down. Which traditionally, I mean, if you watch The Marine, other films, John is just not good, like painful. Where in this instance, it's just, like you said, the story falls flat. The construction, the key plot points, everything is just flat, and you want to invest, you want to root for them wholeheartedly, but the film doesn't allow it. And I think it's a real missed opportunity. I think it could have been a nice positive to look back on in John's early career, and seeing something that even if it failed, which it probably still would have even if it was a good film. But we could have been like, hey, look at that shining light there. We knew it, even though it didn't work. But unfortunately, John was let down there, as for the other team. But obviously, it all worked out. And even so, like even despite the disappointment, it is like I said, very interesting to look back on, because it was like I said, it was a unique feeling, because where the other films, countless WWE films, were just, oh my god, why did they do this? This one, you're like, oh damn, like you could have done something, but you just hodgepodged, shoved it together and were forcing it all, and it was a disservice to all. But regardless of that fact, like I said, if you're a John Cena fan, if you're a fan of this history of wrestling and cinema, and this kind of merging of the two and the history of it, I think it is one that's worth to like look back on, to see there was always promise, specifically in John as an actor, because this one really shows you, because the other ones are just action set pieces. This one, you really tap into moments and you're like, well, he had some instincts that could do it. He was just let down. And obviously now he has direction and writing that does not let him down. Not all the time, but a lot more success now. So yeah, it's a really interesting look back in the history of his career and how it's all evolved and where we've got to today. And it's one of those like little, I can't say gem, I don't think gem is the correct word for this, but one of those like chapters that we forget, but was actually worth digging into to see, how it's all led to the actor and the performer we see today. So yeah, check it out. Don't hate me for not liking the movie, because I've told you it's not great, but from the perspectives and the history standpoint of his journey, it's an interesting watch for sure. So as we continue to wind down to Cena's end in the WWE, we'll have some more reflections, whatever. Dives into history, because there are some more kind of little anniversaries of significant moments of John, film and non-film related or wrestling related, that were very that stand out to me and I wanted to explore. So like, subscribe, follow the podcast, share the podcast. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoyed this dive back in history of this forgotten film. Watch it, watch this, share this, support, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Continue to enjoy the John Cena retirement tour. I know I am. And when it's all said and done, we'll have a full, maybe, reflection on the whole thing. But for now, I bid you adieu. Farewell. Peace out. Love ya.